Good evening. It's just us. Good evening. I am Mark Conway. I'm stepping in as chair for this town hall meeting. It's going to be our second town hall meeting to discuss local control of the Baltimore City Police Department and the two bills that we have up for consideration. That is Bill 23-0445 and Bill 2023-0449. One being the charter amendment and the other being a code change. With us today, we have, of course, myself representing the 4th District. I've got Councilwoman McCray representing the 2nd District. I've got Councilwoman Ramos representing the 14th District. And I believe Councilman Stokes representing the 12th District, who just stepped out for a bit. We're just going to move along through this. For folks, I don't see anyone on here virtually. We're just going to give folks an opportunity to give us insights on the bill as we consider amendments before our next meeting. So for those that are here, do we have a sign-in? Yes, I'm going to go out. All right, we're going to start with the sign-in. And you are, I'll call you up and you can come and say your piece and any insight that we should be thinking about as we consider these two bills. Thank you. All right, first up we have Adina Britt. Press the button on the right.
Okay, I'm actually disappointed that everybody rolled out because it seems like when they need to hear testimony, they're not here. I'm just basically going to go over a little bit of history of qualified immunity and LEOBR. In March of 1973, the state of Maryland was the first state to pass a Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, aka LEOBR. This was proposed as various law enforcement agencies were complaining about low morale and were complaining that they were supposedly being treated unfairly by their supervisors. It appears that in 50 years, nothing's changed because they still complain about low morale and whatnot. We still hear about these same complaints from officers. Though most of them are backed by the FOP's penchant for defending and representing most officers in cases of misconduct, they still manage to sell this idea of a Bill of Rights to state lawmakers. For 50 years, LEOBR has afforded police officers in our state the type of rights that are not enjoyed by every other citizen of Maryland. And qualified immunity is still is a foundational part of LEOBR, and it is still pretty rampant in state law. It was just discussed in Maryland Supreme Court regarding the Cody Gaines case. And basically the qualified immunity in that case is affording the police officers the right to not pay out a civil settlement after shooting a toddler in the face. And qualified immunity was at play yesterday in the decision to not hold the killer of William Green, police officer Owens in PG County. He was acquitted, even though he basically used qualified immunity statements in his defense. In April of 2021, it was reported that the passing of various pieces of legislation dubbed that year as the Police Accountability Acts had essentially repealed LEOBR, but we know that's not 100% the case. Just like citizens of Baltimore thought we had local control measure passed in the bag, LEOBR lives in zombie form in our midst. Though some of the teeth were taken out of it, it still exists, even if it's been altered. I know that I was given a chance to speak at last week's hearing, and I'm speaking on it again for the people who were not present or unaware of the clause that was preliminarily placed into City Council Bill 23-0445 that reads, providing for police officers' enjoyment of certain immunities and defenses, which takes one of the worst pieces of LEOBR and is attempting to have it written in stone in the Baltimore City Charter. This is concerning because the only way to then have it removed from the city charter is go through the arduous process like we've been doing for local control. And we can only change the charter via charter amendment that is then voted on by city residents during a general election, and we only have these elections every 2 years. But we need to consider avoiding this scenario before that happens. Police officers are already overprotected. Writing what is basically qualified immunity, which many social justice organizations have been fighting hard against, into the city charter sets a dangerous precedent. It will literally give police officers license to conduct themselves however they please, including abuse of power, misconduct, and murder. The portions of zombie LEOBR that still exist still protect them until LEOBR is fully repealed. LEOBR is state law, which would override anything the city placed into the city charter as local law. I'm requesting the citizens join me in requesting that this dangerous line be stricken from the final wording for Bill 230445. It's the only thing standing in the way of my support. Police officers already have too much leeway and people turning a blind eye toward misconduct. They don't need qualified immunity written into the city charter, which would only embolden them to act worse than they already have been, which resulted in the 2016 consent decree. In order for people who wish to see more accountability for police that engage in misconduct and feel that the City Council does indeed wish to do right by their constituents, you must remove that line from the City Charter Amendment. I'm in hopes that the City Law Department was not influenced by the FOP or BPD leadership into including that wording, but who can say for sure? It seems that last week many people in the room actually missed that line granting qualified immunity, and well, I didn't miss it, and I'm bringing it to everyone's attention. Please remove it, and you'll have my full support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Britt. I want to let you know that I did definitely take a note of it last time. That's something we're looking into right now with the law department to understand what that actually means and how much effect it actually has. For a little bit of understanding on how we drafted this bill, we effectively took what was in the public local law at the state level and shifted much of that over into what became the two bills at the council level. And some of these things may or may not even be necessary. And so whether or not that vestige is necessary, I think is a question that we're trying to sort out now. So thank you for bringing that up. Next we have Ms. West.
Thank you. I'm just real disappointed right now because we had a packed house, full council, everybody, and then it's like when we talk about a very important issue, everybody leaves the room. And it's just really sad and disgusting. And a big shout out to our sister queen up there that has been just fighting morally for what is right. Even saying no to the new commissioner that does not take our voice seriously, and it's just sad. I am the sister of Tyrone West. I am Tyrone West. That's why I signed down his name. But long story short, we have not had local control over our police officers since the 1800s. And I really feel as though we're never going to have it. And if we do, it's always something thrown in to water it down. Like, they're throwing in a part talking about qualified immunity when they're wreaking havoc in our community. Like, that's what got those 17 killer cops off when they brutally executed my brother. One unarmed man beat to death in broad daylight. Literally, I had to, and then if that wasn't enough, the medical examiner's office covered it up, David Fowler, and I had to dig into my pocketbook, no GoFundMe, my money, $50,000 to have my brother's body exhumed just to get the truth. And still with the truth being out there, nothing is happening. This has been a horrible week for me, real emotional. I'm just leaving work, but just had West Wednesday on the street for the 541 West Wednesday. It was 541 yesterday in the freezing cold. Had a had a firefighter that has been racially discriminated against in the Baltimore City Fire Department. So we think that these issues just happen on one side. It's happening everywhere. It's sad, but to start my week off going through what my sister said with the story of Corinne Gaines being in Supreme Court and these officers getting off with this qualified immunity when a baby, first of all, a mother was executed in front of her baby. That baby will never be the same. And for me to know the mother, like for me to know Miss Rhonda, and that was her daughter, Corinne Gaines, to know the hell that she's going through. And then what her baby is suffering from her grandson. And literally, he will never see his mother again. And they're still having a conversation about money and foolishness when this baby needs help. This is really sad and disgusting. And if that wasn't enough, go to West Windsor yesterday and the verdict come, and for a man that literally, William Green in PG County, got in a car accident, something that never wants a death sentence unless it's a fatal accident. But literally, he gets killed, handcuffed, hands in the back of him, and he's gunned down by a white racist killer cop that has killed before. And he sat in jail since 2020, and then he was released yesterday because he got found not guilty on all charges because of this qualified immunity foolishness. These are our people that are getting murdered. It's going to come a time, unfortunately, when protest signs will drop and people is going to have enough. That's why I'm out here peacefully trying to advocate and stop that. We really need local control over our police officers. We need it now. We shouldn't have to wait another 2 years to 2025 or whenever you got. It's like y'all keep on putting time in between everything, and then in between that, you're throwing water on top of it, and we're dying. There's so much of stuff in the books right now of the laws that pretty much should cover us from getting murdered, and it's not doing anything. We're still getting murdered. We're still getting murdered, and this is sad, and I don't want any of us can get murdered. You guys are the skin color of me, and I appreciate you guys being here, but it can happen to anybody. It's just a doorstep away from anybody. No one wants that call that your loved one was murdered, especially being in a vulnerable place of pulling over. You're not pulling over for, a robber. You're pulling over for an officer that you think that you can trust, and then you wind up losing your life for a traffic stop, or someone raids your house on a traffic stop issue, Corinne Gaines, and she's murdered in front of her baby, and her baby's almost murdered. Something needs to be done now, ASAP. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Ms. West. I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Porter, who's joined the meeting. Next up, we have Dan Hellerbach. Did I get that right?
Hellerback.
Hellerback.
Either one. A former administrator, and the kids used to say Hollerback, so it all works. Without reiterating too much of what the previous speakers just talked about, I do want to say, one, I'm highly in favor of local control. I believe that the local control was lost partly due to racism that the protesters in Baltimore were not able to be, who were protesting racism in the city, were not be able to put down by the police force in the city, so the state had to come in. And since that time, or at that time, it was adjudicated that Baltimore City needed someone else to monitor and control our police force, which is, we are the only jurisdiction, I'm aware, that actually has that unfortunate arrangement. And I think my understanding, and I've heard this stated before, that part of the reason that that's been perpetuated is that there's a cap in the state on civil lawsuits. And so I think there is some caps. And jurisdictions have caps too. That's actually part of the case with Corinne Gaines. The judge overruled partly because the $33 million settlement exceeded the cap in Baltimore County. So I just think that's part of the whole puzzle here, and I think it's kind of where qualified immunity even comes in, intersects with that, because, well, one, for those who are unaware, qualified immunity has two pillars. One is that whether the constitutional right of the victim was violated, and then whether the officer knowingly violated those constitutional rights. So officers often use the excuse that they had to, in the moment, make a decision, even when it's fairly obvious that deliberation was used in making the decision. I mean, Corinne Gaines, she was held hostage in her house for 6 hours. An officer came up and shot through the wall, shot her, and then consequently hit her son, Cody Gaines. But somehow they said that it was still qualified immunity, that it wasn't deliberate, that he was hot and confused and upset at the time. So I strongly object to any use of the word immunity, because it implies that qualified immunity that police officers have. We still are under the consent decree, which again was part of that, was the fact that Baltimore police had a record of racist acts towards the black community, and we are still under the consent decree. So we need to be very wary of officers having unlimited power and not using the best judgment, or fearing that were they to use poor judgment or misconduct, that there'll be consequences for those actions. We need to make sure that officers know that they're accountable for their actions. And I think that's it, but I am in favor of local control.
Thank you, Mr. Hollerback. I wanted to correct a couple of things, and I think it's important just for the public to know it was a misnomer that there was a cap to protect the city from paying over a certain amount. We've learned this after multiple cases that came out of the GTTF cases. That cap it doesn't matter, and so the city's paid out at this point probably over $100 million at this point because of police misbehavior. And then there was another point. I wanted to bring up just, I think it's important for folks to appreciate one of the major steps that this body had taken and voted on in this session was the Police Accountability Board, which gives citizens, residents, everyday people like you the opportunity to weigh in on police misconduct cases and ultimately decide in instances what the punishment should be. And the punishment can only be worse from the commissioner, but must be at least what the Police Accountability Board and those charging committees determine. And so we've taken some pretty significant steps to make sure that there's that direct responsibility for the police department going forward. I appreciate the qualified immunity cases that the three of you brought up, and it's definitely something we're looking into as we evaluate the bill and understand what that actually means within the bill. So I don't see any other folks here to testify in person. Any thoughts from folks here? I don't see anybody joining us virtually. Actually, maybe I do.
These are just Michael Wells from John TV.
All right. We don't have anybody joining us virtually. So with that, going once, going twice, nobody coming through the door, we are going to and this town hall. I appreciate you guys for coming out, and thank you for all the insight. If you have additional feedback that you'd like to provide, please do share that with myself, the council president, or anybody else on the council. We'll make sure to take that into consideration as we finalize this bill. Thank you.